Hello and welcome to this week's episode of #Leadership What's on Your Mind, a series to make you stop and think about your leadership journey and getting great speakers and great experts in the field of leadership to come and share their knowledge and add to your story. So today we are speaking to R. Michael Anderson. How are you?
Very good, Stuart. How are you?
Good, I'm amazing. Thank you so much for joining me. Ladies and gents, this is our last episode of 2020. So I just wanted to add a little bit in here that next year we've got in January some inspirational people that have thrived in 2020, and it's going to really help you add to your leadership journey to kickstart 2021. In February, we've got inspirational authors and speakers around leadership. I'm amazed to sort of share with you that Joe Foster, the founder of Reebok, will be joining us, and the author, David Marquette, of the amazing book, Turn the Ship Around. So make sure you hit subscribe, hit follow, and you'll be having those amazing guests coming your way. So what a great way to finish 2020 and the start of this podcast in May 2020, episode 36. Michael is a software entrepreneur, very successful in business, a best-selling author, and I'm absolutely pleasured to have you here because we connected on LinkedIn. I went and checked you out, your website and your speaking, and you come across so well. So I can't wait for you to share your story. So tell us a little bit more. As I hit the 20-minute timer, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, Stuart, you know, the 2020's been, let's face it, tough. And I almost see this as a call for leaders, as you know what, we're in a leadership position. And I think when people are in a leadership position, they assume a certain amount of responsibility. And I know, Stuart, like you've had experience in leadership in the military and in business and athletics. But I think when you say, like, look, I'm going to be the captain of a team, I'm going to be, you know, this rank, I'm going to lead this company or whatever it is in the company, then you're responsible for your team. You're responsible for not just the performance, but their mental health. You're responsible for whether it's the company or whatever it is. And like it or not, we got to step up. And nobody could have ever thought that we'd be under this many types of pressures. And I've been through some really down points in my life, and I've learned some things about how to manage and lead myself and how to manage and lead my team through really difficult times. And I've been through depressions, I've been through substance abuse, I've been through almost giving up. And I think that a lot of people and a lot of leaders are going through that. So I just wanted to do anything that I could to maybe give them a little bit of tools and skills and inspiration myself through this 2020.
Yeah, amazing. So we're obviously #leadership. What's on your mind? What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you just hear the word leadership?
You know, first of all, what came to my mind right now is the fact of people want you to be a leader. Now, if you are a leader of your team, so many people like resist being that leader, calling themselves the leader, being assertive, taking responsibility and taking ownership. You know, for example, I give people an example. If you paid $100,000 for me to teach a course, an in-person course, and so you walked into the classroom, it's supposed to start at 10 a.m. and then 10 a.m. comes and there's a bunch of people that are having side conversations, a couple people on their phone, and it's 10:01 and I'm the instructor, and I'm like, whenever everybody's ready, please put away your phones or stop talking, and they continue to talk. You would probably say, Michael, get these people in line, have them shut up. I just paid you this money to learn this. Take leadership, you know, take the lead. And your team wants you to do that. And so first of all, admit to yourself you're the leader. Quit trying to say, I'm not a leader, I'm a programmer. I'm not a leader, I'm a salesperson. You may be, that might be your background, but you're a freaking leader now. So get used to it and start learning how to be a leader. And I think, you know, #leadership, what's on your mind, is a great thing to do, because it's like you're investing in your leadership, but you also have to switch you have to switch that switch in your head to start embracing leadership instead of trying to brush it off.
Yeah, do you know what? That's amazing as well, because that's one of the things that I've seen outside of my military bubble, regards to how much the label of leadership is taken on or not, as you just equated to there, that how many people do identify as a leader. And I don't think there's that many people that do that maybe should.
Yeah, and there's a couple of different reasons. One thing I have some business success, but I also have a master's in psychology, and it's actually a defense mechanism, because when we don't call ourselves a leader and we don't succeed, then it's not like it's like we're one step back. And one important thing that I learned, I had a great teacher, and they said, look, you have to be 100% in, because the difference between being 100% in and 99% in is a world of difference. And I noticed in my life, I would be 99% in, but I'd have that one toe like outside of the thing, outside of being in, because if I failed, then I could say, well, I wasn't fully in. And a lot about being successful is about committing. And and again, it's okay to fail, but we have to take ownership from it. And I know there's a lot of people that talk about that, but to me, that really made a big difference in my life, knowing the difference between the 99% and the 100%.
Amazing. I love that. So staying really on your journey, we always ask people about, are you aware of when your journey started, whether on reflection or at the time? So where would you go back to? Where did your leadership journey start?
Well, Stuart, my leadership journey, well, if you talk about like a pivotal moment, it was April 1st, 2007, because at that time it was the evening that something really massive happened. And I'll never forget, because earlier that day, my business partner assaulted me. He hit me in our own office. And at some point, you go on my YouTube channel, you can hear the long story. But the fact is, we were having a disagreement about ownership percentages, and he got so angry that he literally hit me in the office, and I had to it's not that we got into a fight, it's just he was so angry that happened, and then he left, and then I had to go get an attorney to file a lawsuit and kick them out of the business, because I still own the majority of it. But it started this nasty lawsuit that cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars, the hardest thing I ever had to been through, sent me into a depression. And this is maybe 3 years into me owning a business, and I realized that my life was out of control in a bad way, and I kept trying to control and micromanage everything. And to be quite honest, Stuart, I remember this specific evening where that just happened. I didn't know if I was going to lose everything or not. I was massively down. I had the Johnny Walker port. I was rolling a joint. I was going to do some cocaine, because back then that's how I normally dealt with problems. And I started to reevaluate everything that was going on, because I don't know if anything really traumatic has ever happened to you, and it really made you reflect. But that's the mode I was in, and I realized that I needed to change, because what I was doing wasn't working. I was having a little bit of success, but I wasn't creating a sustainable business. I was riding on my personality, because I'm smart and I'm driven, and that can get me so far, and that gets a lot of leaders so far, but then they don't learn how to be a strategic leader and to really learn these leadership skills. And that's part of the reason I had this problem with this business partner. That's part of the reason why we started to have all these scaling problems. And that's why my mental health, his mental health were not being taken care of. And that's why all this happened. And I made two life-changing choices in that moment. One is, instead of self-medicating myself, which is a great short-term solution, but a really bad long-term solution, I went for a jog. So I did something healthy for myself instead of unhealthy. And then I told myself, look, whatever it takes, I'm going to learn how to be a positive, empowering type of leader. Because I saw other people doing it. And I realized that I'm a good doer. That's going to be my new goal, because I can get goals done. I just never had that as the goal. And so that's when I really went on that journey. And I read so many books. I got coaches. I got trained by the best in the business. And I also signed up for and earned a master's in spiritual psychology. And when I say spiritual psychology, nothing to do with religion. It's a very compassionate, loving view of psychology, where we learn psychoanalysis techniques, because we take the assumption that we're all at the core good people. We're all loving beings. And if you choose to have a soul, our soul is love, if you choose to believe that. And one of the ways you get more in line with your authenticity is by using psychoanalysis techniques to clear all the crap. That's a scientific term, the crap
Yeah.
out of your consciousness.
I love that.
Yeah, because there's so many things that we all have that's holding ourselves back. So when you run into imposter syndrome, or you find yourself self-sabotaging, or that little voice is telling you maybe you've earned this promotion, or you work so hard to build this business, but then that little voice is saying, oh my gosh, you're not worthy of this. Maybe you shouldn't speak up. Maybe you should play it safe. That's our ego. And we all go through that, but there's so many things that I learned, and that's what I teach leaders now. And I teach, some of the companies that call me in to teach their leaders are Uber, Microsoft, Salesforce. Stanford brings me in to work with their startup ecosystem. PwC brings me in to work with their high potential entrepreneurs, because a lot's taught about management, but not a lot is taught about the mindset of a successful leader. And a lot of that, to me, is about being more comfortable with yourself, because when you're more comfortable with yourself, then you can have the hard decisions. Then you can hold people accountable because you're holding yourself accountable. And so I work a lot with people actually on self-confidence and self-esteem, because if you look at leaders that you really look up to, and I want everybody out there listening to or watching or even used to it, just to think about a leader that you really look up to. They believe in themselves. They have confidence, and they believe in where they're going, and you feed off of that. There's never been an insecure leader that people are like, oh my God, I really respect that leader, and I'm gonna look up to him. If you look at who's out there, whether it's Elon Musk or just Steve Jobs, they have this magical thing where they might not know where they're going, but you have faith they're going to get you there.
Yeah, you mentioned it earlier on. It's one of my big things that came out of transferring over into the outside the military bubble, is that you've got to have self-leadership and that self-drive before you then bring others along, and that will be a natural connection. If that happens, you're going away from having to tell and persuade. People will just naturally resonate towards you.
Yeah, and I think the military is very good because they really realize that, and they give good training around that. Am I right with that?
Yeah, it's obviously still individual element of that as a part of the system, but yeah, you're right to have the structure and also the history and the cultural platform and the pillars, because I talk about the fact of shared experiences, and we all go through basic training, and we all go through what I was doing, which was adventure training. So if you land in any team anywhere in the world, those are the two things that you've got shared knowledge and understanding about, and a shared platform of wealth of knowledge on leadership, team dynamics, and your role in that.
Yeah, and my impression is the military is very good about showing you what needs to be done as a leader and then easing you into that. In business, it could be where you're a good developer and all of a sudden you're in charge of a development team, or you're in charge of, I started as a programmer, or you're in charge of this big project, and they're like, oh, you're a good coder. I'm sure you can be good at managing these coders, and then the people are like, well, what made me a good coder is I'm really introverted. I control all my code, and all of a sudden I need emotional intelligence, and I need, and I need to be able to connect and communicate and hold accountable, and then have a vision and all these other things. They're two totally different skill sets, and I think that's why there's so honestly there's a lot of poor leadership in business and in technology specifically, because often it's younger people that are there's a bigger amount of change, and I think as we see in 2020 with all this COVID and pandemics, companies and leaders have had to go through more change sometimes in the last 8 or 9 months than they have literally in the last 20 years.
Yeah, amazing. So you've got a new book coming out. I'd love you to share with us all the information around that. What can people expect, and what's the meaning behind it?
Yeah, and it's because I work with a lot of different businesses and a lot of different leadership organizations, and I realize obviously that they're going through a lot. And in the first part of the pandemic, we were just focused on saving their business. And I equate that to a street fight. Like, if you don't protect yourself and strike, you're literally going to die. That's what we had to go through in the first 3, 4, 6 weeks. So they made those changes, and then it's almost like a sprint. Where are you going to pivot? And because we thought this was going to be over in July, I mean, we forget about that, but we thought this is going to be March to July, and then we realized that this is like a marathon. So Now we have to really look at things strategically. Now, a lot of companies are going from an all on-site or they're going to a lot more of a remote or distributed workforce, and it's creating major havoc. And there's a big mental health tsunami coming, and it's sort of starting to bubble up because people are used to being in this street fight and sprint mode, but you can't sprint a marathon. We're at a point where we're months and months in, and there's been some Qualtrics surveys. This is a couple months ago. They said 45% of the people are having somewhat significant or higher mental health issues, and 60% don't feel supported by their leaders in their companies, and they also don't feel open enough, safe enough to bring this up to them. And so, because it's been happening so much, I did a study the last couple of weeks and interviews with both team members and leaders, and they're seeing real mental health issues. And the thing is about mental health issues, once you see them, it's too late. You have to start you have to be proactive, and you have to look for the clues, because by the time they come to you and they're in a depression or they're on medication, so many more people are going to, I think psychology is great and counselors are great, but by the time you're on medication, it takes a long time to heal a person when you're at those levels.
Yeah, amazing. So what is this book going to be giving people?
It's going to be giving people a lot of structures and tools and mindset changes that they are going to need to do to shift for this. And it's for people. Like there's some companies it's not made for. Like I talked to this one lady, she was in charge of talent development for this company that they were already virtual, and they were a programming shop, so they would rent out programmers to other companies. So culture wasn't a huge issue for them because they were in the culture of the teams that they were in, and they were virtual already. So, that COVID affects them, but really not that much. There's other companies that have maybe been, they're 5,000 people and they used to be all on site, and all of a sudden they're going to move to like a hybrid workforce where they're going to be partially in an office, partially remote. Maybe different people are going to be different ways. If that's you and that's your company, whether you're in the team or a leader or in both, you really have to have a strategy around this. And it's a different way of leadership. I mean, leadership's leadership, whether again it's sports, military, or business, but there's a lot of subtle differences which are really important. Like, for example, leaders out there, they have to create, when you have a remote team or a hybrid team, you have to increase your amount of time to leading and managing, because you're not in the office. Because when you come into an office every day, you are sort of absorbed. You are there's an inherent team camaraderie. If I work for Microsoft, and I work into a Microsoft office, there's something about walking into the office that says Microsoft, and you see this executive, and you see that, it's like, hey, I'm part of Microsoft, right? And hey, here's what's happening. You see the people at the water cooler getting coffee or lunch or an after work thing of, here's the company strategy. Well, if you're at home, if your people are at home, you have to remind them of the company strategy. You have to remind them of the company culture. It's so much more intentional. And so if you were spending 5 hours a week on managing, leading, you have to double that to 10 hours a week. If it was 10 hours a week, you have to double it to 20 hours a week. You have to be so intentional about that. You have to recreate everything that they had in the office, whether it's maybe that is cross-functional teams. So maybe you had your development team and your sales team over here, and then they had lunch every Friday. They're not doing that. Or maybe they just bumped into each other. So you have to figure out, you have to be creative of how they communicate. Otherwise, they're going to be more siloed. They're not going to be communicating, and you're going to lose the company culture.
Yeah, and I said quite quickly in the whole of this that you could hear people saying, and the language they were using about, oh, we'll wait till we get back to normal. And it's the new norm, isn't it? About, you can tell people that are resistant to change, resistant to different cultures, different people, different thing, and it's innate in us, isn't it, regard that resistance to change? But that's the new reality, isn't it?
Yes, and you're absolutely right. And there are ways let's face it, and that's why I call the book, I was going to call it Leading Through the New Normal, but then people are like, we're in the new normal. I said, so leading through the next normal. And
Yeah.
part of that is creating resilient teams. And to create resilient teams, and it's like, it's all the stuff, Stuart, you and I already know about leadership. You just got to do it better. Like you got to
Yeah.
have better accountability, and you have to run meetings tighter, and you have to teach people resilience better. And so it's really about putting them in and systematizing them and really upping your game as a leader so that you can, I mean, when it comes to resilient teams and managing change, you have to, it's very intentional. So the more change is going on, the less projects you have to have people on, because you have to give them the downtime, you have to give them the creative time, you have to give them that. I find what's been happening over the last 8 months is there's been so much change, and then leaders who are dumping more things on their people, and their people are tired, but they're scared that they're going to get fired, they're scared that they're going to get laid off or furloughed, they're scared the company's going to go out of business or whatever. So they've been taking this up, and now they're burned out. And now, leaders are saying they're having people just come to them just frazzled, and leaders are forcing people to take time off because they haven't taken holidays. And so we really have to, companies really have to look at this strategically. Otherwise, they're going to personally and collectively burn out.
Yeah, amazing. So we have only got 30 seconds left, but I want to extend it a little bit because I really want you to answer this question about regards to being a great reader, reading a great book. And I always have this thing about challenging people about how do we take leadership off the page? So how do we transfer it into our lives? And I see some people being great readers, but there's nothing changing. And I've had conversations with people around that about they're doing lots of self-development, but the biggest impact I see is that implementation, accountability. I say leadership is a bit like your fingerprint. It's unique to you, and you need to educate and add value. So what's your perspective on how do we take leadership off the page?
When you say off the page, what do you exactly mean by that?
So it's a bit like if I read a model of leadership and then I just went to verbatim started doing that. How do we actually make it our own? How do we use what we read and then implement?
Well, I'll give you a quick one, then I'll give you another one. One is get a coach, because, and I know I do some coaching and mentoring. I realize that I'm telling you to get somebody like me, but my leadership life didn't transform until I had somebody that has done it before, basically telling me where my blind spots are and holding me accountable. But also, like you said, something really important there, Stuart, is real, and it's understanding your fingerprint or what's unique to you. Because when I was young, I had two really influential leaders in my life, Bruce and George, and they were my bosses. They were my first, and I looked up to them. They're such cool guys, and I would try to emulate everything they did. So if Bruce would run a meeting this way, I would try to run it exactly how he did this. If George would even have the tone of voice and how he carried himself, I would try to do exactly that, and it failed because I was trying to be them. And when I got comfortable with myself enough to understand why they did that, because there was wisdom in there, but it wasn't about copying them, but it was taking, well, why did George do this, or why did Bruce say this, or how did they structure things this way? Oh, and then run it through me as a person, because again, I had faith in myself and I had confidence and enough self-esteem that I could make it my own. That's when I really transformed.
Amazing, awesome, and I see that all the time, and I think people listening to that will get that, and adding that bit of information or awareness to the audience's journey is really going to help. So thank you so much for your time today. That's been an amazing. I love every guest that I've had on because it's just speaking to like-minded people, which is a great privilege to have. So thank you for your time. Guys, so if you're listening to us on your podcast provider, make sure you hit follow. It really helps if you write us a review. I'd love to hear your takeaways from each great guest that we've had on. Everybody has their own little nuggets of information that you can add to your own journey. So please share that with us and also pass that forward. If you're watching us on the YouTube channel, make sure you hit subscribe, hit the bell every Wednesday at 6 a.m. As of January 2021, which is absolutely amazing to say that. I don't know where 2020's gone. So I really look forward to seeing you next year. And I hope you have a great Christmas, and we'll see you on the other side. So Michael, just thank you so much again.
Thanks, Stuart. Thanks, everybody.
No worries. So guys, I will see you in the new year. Take care. Bye.